Hi there. Welcome to the SoberCircle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
No money. Thank you, my friend. You got 1 hour. Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Jack, and I am an alcoholic. And it's wonderful to be here with you fine folks this evening. I want to thank the committee for allowing Bill to invite me to be here this evening. I think it's important that you know who is responsible for my being here this evening. And Bill said if I mentioned his name 3 times, he'd give me $10. So if I say anything that offends you during the next 2.5 hours that we're together, please take that up with Bill, because Bill is the person who's responsible for my being here. Now, if I happen to say something that you approve of, well, by all means, I would ask that you speak with me after the meeting, because I really enjoy those attaboys. I come to you from Hagerstown, Maryland, where I am a member of the Hagerstown group of Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of the members of my home group are here this evening as in a function that they call lie detectors. So if you see any of them jumping up, just ignore them. I'm a member in good standing of the Hagerstown group. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I sponsor people. I have a service position there. And our group meets on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if I'm in Hagerstown, that's where you can find me, at the meeting of the Hagerstown group. That is a commitment that I have made in my recovery. My mom is 94 years old. Yeah. And she was married to my alcoholic father for 30 years. And I say that not because it has anything to do with my alcoholism, but Thursday, when I went over to talk to my mom and remind her that I was going to be out of town this weekend, and told her that I was coming to York, Pennsylvania, she said, "Are you speaking at another one of those AA things?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She said, "You make sure you tell those people that you are not an alcoholic." Now, my mom knows what an alcoholic is, and she says I'm not an alcoholic. And quite frankly, I think it's about time I started listening to my mom. I may have overreacted to this whole thing. So, I think everybody here knows this, but I think it needs to be said in case somebody gets hold of this lead. I am not a spokesperson for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor am I an expert on Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been asked to come here this evening and to try in a general way share with you what I used to be like and what happened to me and what my life is like now. And I will try to do that by sharing with you my experience, strength, and hope. But I have to warn you that it's quite possible that I may share some of my opinion, strength, and hope with you. And if I do that, please take what I say, run it through the big book, and if you can find it in there, you can rely upon it, and if not, forget about it. Bill said something about cell phones, and to be perfectly honest with you, if you're alcoholic like I'm alcoholic, I don't like being told what to do. I really don't. Quite frankly, when I'm told to do something, I generally just do the opposite. So if you're here this evening and you got a cell phone with you, by all means, turn that puppy on. And if you would, however, be so kind to put it on vibrate, and that way you can enjoy your incoming call and you won't disturb the rest of us. I'm going to put my watch up here, Bill, not because I can see it or pay much attention to it, but I just think it gives hope to the newcomer. I began to drink when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I'm not quite sure why I waited so long, but I did. And I used to say that drinking never caused me any difficulty. I mean, as soon as I drank, I knew why my father drank. And it was a shame that my dad couldn't control his drinking better than he could, the way I could. But I knew exactly why he drank, because it probably did for me exactly what it did for you. It allowed me to do things which I had never been able to do when not drinking. It allowed me to fit in an environment and a reality in which I felt that I did not fit in. I thought I was apart from. Allowed me to do things in high school like, go to dances and talk to girls, actually dance with girls. I thought I could sing when drinking. These are delusional thoughts that all began early, and as a result of good sponsorship, I have to tell you this evening that I spent 5 years in high school. All right? I used to think it was because I wanted to get a solid academic background before I launched off into the college, and then my fallback position was it was a result of a series of bad breaks and misunderstandings that could have happened to anybody. But now I understand and recognize that it was the drinking, and nothing but the drinking, that caused me to spend 5 years in high school. But when I got out of high school, I went to the community college in Hagerstown. And while working at the community college one summer, or while going to the community college, and I was working at a drugstore in Hagerstown, and one summer my good friend Bill and I decided that we were going to take a road trip, and we were going to drive to California. And so I quit my job at the drugstore, and we got 12 cases of beer and put them in the back of my car, and we each packed an overnight bag, and we had everything you needed to drive to California. But on the day before we were to leave, Bill's father said he couldn't go. And I was crushed. Now, Bill was a stand-up guy, and he did give me his half interest in those 12 cases of beer. And as many of you know, here in York, the state of Maryland has a little place there on our easternmost border that's on the Atlantic Ocean. And there's a resort community there called Ocean City. And so I took my 12 cases of beer and I drove down to Ocean City, where I spent a month living as a bum. Didn't have a job, slept in the basement of hotels where people I knew were working as desk clerks and bellhops, and so I didn't have to pay anything for room. And then I would go to restaurants where people were waiters and waitresses that I knew, and I would eat leftover restaurant food, half a lobster tail or an uneaten crab cake. And so I didn't have to pay anything for a room. I didn't pay anything for board. I had my 12 cases of beer, and I had that pocket full of money that I got from quitting my job. And so I had a great month in Ocean City, and so much so that I decided that I wanted to work in Ocean City, bless you, the following summer. So I'm a keen observer of my surroundings, and it became readily apparent to me that if you drank like I drank and acted like I acted over the course of a summer, it really didn't matter if you were a lifeguard or a beach boy or a bellhop or a bartender or waiter or waitress. I mean, if you drank like I drank and acted like I acted over the course of 3 months, there was a good chance that I would get arrested. And I didn't want to get arrested. But I did notice that there were a group of people who were working in Ocean City who drank like I drank, and they acted like I acted when drinking, and they were not getting arrested, and these were the members of the Ocean City Police Department. So I became a police officer. That first summer that I was a police officer, they gave me a boardwalk beat. They put me at 9th Street, which back in those days was a happening place. Beach Club was there. That was a hot nightclub. A lot of action on 9th Street. Within a week or 10 days, it became readily apparent that I possess a singularly unique talent, which was very handy to me as a police officer, and that is I was able to spot an underage drinker from maybe 100, 150 yards away. And I would identify my target of opportunity. I would approach him or her. I would establish that indeed they were underage. I would inquire as to what was in the cooler, and they would generally say something like, well, we got some Coca-Cola in there, and we got a little Tupperware thing of tuna fish and half a loaf of bread. Well, would you mind opening the cooler? And they'd open the lid of the cooler, and there was a nice even row of Coca-Cola cans with the crushed ice, and over in the corner was a little Tupperware thing of tuna fish, sure enough, and then there's a half a loaf of bread in there. But I would reach way down into the bottom of that cooler, and invariably, I'd come up with a Budweiser. And if you were that underage drinker, your life, as you have known it, is over. I know. You thought you were going to college. But you're not. You're going to jail. Going into the military, really? No kidding. Well, let me tell you something, pal. The military isn't going to want to have anything to do with you once they find out you've been in the Ocean City jail. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call your mom and dad back in Baltimore at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to tell them that you are locked up in the Ocean City jail, and they got to come down here and bail you out. What's that? You'd like to offer a compromise? Some kind of alternative solution to this problem, or what did you have in mind? Confiscate the beer. Well, that's certainly worthy of consideration. But you do understand that if I confiscate the beer, I'm going to have to take the cooler. And if I take the cooler, I'm going to have to take the Tupperware full of tuna fish and the Coca-Cola. You're okay with that? All right. You have to promise me that you will never, ever do anything like this again while in Ocean City. Have your word on that? Okay, you're free to go. Now, it is really difficult to walk a boardwalk beat when you're dragging a cooler full of beer around behind you. So I had to work out an arrangement with my lieutenant and my sergeant, and they would come with their squad car when I called them, and they would pick up the coolers as I accumulated them. And then at the end of the shift, we'd all meet down at the parking lot at the Ocean City Police Department, and I would give them the whiskey or the wine that I may have confiscated during my shift, and I would take the cooler and the beer and the tuna fish and the Coca-Cola. Had a great summer that summer. I drank every day. I didn't buy anything to drink the entire summer, and I did not get arrested. And that's my idea of a good summer. So I went back to Ocean City for a second summer. The second summer, because I'm now an experienced police officer, they gave me a squad car. Yeah. Lights and sirens, yeah. Big old Ford Crown Victoria. Remember those things? I mean, you can get 5 bodies or 6 coolers in the back of one of those things. Now, I no longer needed my lieutenant or my sergeant like I had the previous year, but they maintained a close watch over my activities. And I would meet them at the end of every shift, and I would give them the whiskey and the wine, and I took the coolers and the beer. And I had a great summer that summer. I drank every day. I didn't buy anything to drink the entire summer, and I didn't get arrested. And If you would have been coming down to Ocean City that summer, and you were an acquaintance of mine, or you really didn't even have to be an acquaintance of mine. You could be an acquaintance of somebody else who I knew. But if you needed a cooler, I'm your guy. I got coolers up to the ceiling in the back porch. And I got a no-return policy. You just come select the cooler you want. Have a good time. Don't get arrested. Went back for a third summer. Now, I'm going to tell you about an incident that changed the entire course of my life. Now, keep in mind I'm a college kid, and I got no idea what I'm going to do when I get out of college. I know what I don't want to do, and that is go to Southeast Asia. So I'm doing a lot of thinking. You know, that's bad for an alcoholic. So I'm down in Ocean City, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I stop a car on the beach highway, weaving back and forth. Guy's obviously drunk. I get him out of the car. I'm writing him up. And he says to me, "You don't know who I am, do you, officer?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, I am the state's attorney for Worcester County, the county that you're standing in right now." Well, like I said, I'm a college kid. I never heard the term state's attorney before. I had no idea what a state's attorney did. I'd never seen one before. So I said, "Good for you. Sign the ticket." And so he signed the ticket. There was a guy in the car who seemed to be sober, and I let him drive. And they went on their way, and I ended up my shift. I pulled into the parking lot of the Ocean City Police Department at 8 a.m., and there was the chief of police. And he said, "Bring that uniform citation book with you and come on up to my office." Well, these were the first words that the chief had spoken to me all summer. Well, it is a good thing. I'm about to get recognition for a job well done. Long overdue recognition, I might add. So I went up to the chief's office, and I walked into his office, and there, seated on the couch right inside the door, was the guy I gave the ticket to at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the chief says, "Give me that ticket book." I gave him the ticket book. He flipped it open to the ticket. He hands it to the guy on the couch. The guy on the couch takes out a pen, and he writes across the face of that ticket, "Case dismissed," and signs his name. It was at that moment I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Because if you drank and drove like I drank and drove, the ability to dismiss traffic tickets with a stroke of a pen was going to come in mighty handy. So I went to law school. Law school interfered with my drinking somewhat because they have a lot of really smart people in law school. I was not one of them. But I got out of law school. While in law school, my wife and I got married, and we went back to Hagerstown, where I grew up, and I began practicing law there, and I'd probably been practicing maybe 6-8 weeks, and I became aware that they were advertising for an assistant state's attorney over at the courthouse. So I went right over. Here I am, answer to your prayers. When would you like me to start? Now, what I'm about to tell you is what I thought I heard them say. Some of you, I think, have experienced this. Things in my life that I thought had been said, turns out they were never said. Things that I thought I saw happen, never happened. I have a problem with perception. I have a hearing problem. I hear things that are never said. But this is what I thought I heard them say. "What? Are you some kind of an idiot? You just got out of law school. You've never been in a courtroom. You've never impaneled a jury. You've never made an opening statement or a closing argument. You've never examined or cross-examined a witness. We don't have any time to train you. Get out of the office. That's what I thought I heard them say. Now, in truth, I believe they said something like, the position has been filled. But I heard what I heard, and I was upset. See, I'm a very sensitive person. I don't suffer well. I was wounded. I was angry. I now know that I left there with a resentment. And I think we all know that an alcoholic with a resentment can do quite a lot of damage. Now, back in Maryland, like you do here in Pennsylvania, we elect our prosecutors. And I went out and found a lawyer who wanted to be state's attorney. I ran his campaign for state's attorney. He got elected state's attorney, and he made me deputy state's attorney. Now, when you get to be deputy state's attorney, they give you a badge. And they give you a badge, they give you a badge case. In that badge case, they got this clear plastic window where you put your driver's license. So when they pull you over and they say license and registration, you show them your badge case. They don't look at your driver's license. They look at the badge. Oh, the badge officer? Deputy State's Attorney, Washington County. I may have had 4 or 5. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 2 or 3 miles, I'll be home. Yeah, I think I can stay on my side of the road for that distance. Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, sir, I am not upset with you for stopping me. No, sir, you're just doing your job. Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much, officer. And I want you to know that I very much appreciate the professional courtesy which you're extending to me. And you have a nice night. Thank you, sir. Yes, goodbye. Now, some of you may be getting a little insight into why I've never been arrested or been to jail. But it gets better. My boss, the state's attorney, was going to be appointed circuit court judge by the governor. And if he got appointed circuit court judge, I'm going to get appointed state's attorney. But sometimes in Maryland, and this may happen here in Pennsylvania, the local state senator sticks his nose in where it doesn't belong, screws the whole thing up, and somebody else got appointed circuit court judge. And I was very disappointed for my friend. But I was some kind of upset that I didn't get to be state's attorney. I may not be much, but I'm all I think about. And one night, while having some adult beverages with some like-minded individuals, it was determined that something had to be done about that state senator. He shouldn't be allowed to get away with a thing like that, and somebody ought to run against him. So I ran for the state senate. I didn't know that the state senator was going to run away with the secretary from the Appropriations Committee and abandon his wife and 3 children and move to Florida, but he did, and I got elected to the state senate. Now in Maryland, you get elected to the state senate, they give you a license plate. And that license plate says state senator. Now, these license plates are an aid to efficient law enforcement. Because when they come up behind you on the interstate, and they got those overheads going on, and they get up close enough to see that license plate, they turn those overheads out. Come up alongside of you, they turn that interior dome light on, and they toot. Beep, beep. Hi, Senator. Hi, Trooper. Hold it down, Senator. Okay, Trooper. And in that way, you don't have a lot of members of the Maryland State Police tied up alongside of the highway with members of the General Assembly when they could be out arresting real crooks. And well, I'm drinking alcoholically all through this. I love to drink. I love everything about drinking. I love the ambiance of drinking. I love bar drinking. I love neon lights. I love the way the light reflects off of the back bar mirror and reflects through the various shaped bottles and the colors, the browns, the tans, the clears, the greens, the yellows. I love peanut shells. I love sawdust on the floor. I love the smell of stale beer and urine. I love the glassware. You know those tall, slender glasses that you see this time of the year for those Tom Collins? You know? The little short, squat glasses for old fashions. The stemware, the fluted martini glass. I mean, where do you find olives like that but in the gin martini? At one time, I had a love affair with the gin martini. But I have to report to you this evening that I had a very bad gin experience. And even to this day, it is hard for me to go into a pine forest. My drink of choice was Jack Daniel's Black Label and crushed ice with a twist of lemon. Man, that was to die for. And I almost did. That guy that got appointed circuit court judge, he didn't like the job. He quit. So I went down to see the governor. I'm the state senator. I'd like you to appoint my friend, the state's attorney. I'd like you to appoint him circuit court judge. He said, can't do that, Senator. Too much adverse publicity associated with that last judicial appointment up there in Hagerstown. I cannot and will not appoint your friend. However, if you'd like to be circuit court judge, I'll appoint you. Well, in Maryland, it's a 15-year term, and there are only 2 of us in the community, so it doesn't come around all that often. So I became a circuit court judge. Scary, isn't it? Yeah. Give you some idea how I tried to cooperate with the Bar Association in every way that I could. The Bar Association was having a continuing legal education program on the prosecution and defense of drunk driving. Sergeant Long was there. He had his breathalyzer with him, and they needed somebody to volunteer to drink the beer and blow into the breathalyzer. Somebody who was neutral, fair-minded, unbiased. I'll help out any way I can. They brought out a tray, had 6 beers and 6 cans of beer all iced down. I said to the guy from the hotel, I said, what's that? He said, well, that's the beer for tonight's program. I said, you do realize that this is a 2-hour program, and you've only brought out 6 beers. He said, we got plenty of beer back in the back. And I said, you better ice it down and bring it out, because I'm not drinking any warm beer. So he did, and I commenced to start drinking the beer, and then every 15 minutes I blow into the breathalyzer, and you get 0.05, and then it kind of jumps up to like a 0.09, and then a 0.15, and 0.2, and 0.26, and 0.30, and 0.33, and it was at that juncture that they called upon me to put on my part of the program, which I am told was quite good under the circumstances. And after the program was over, I said to the guy who was the chairman, I said, "Who's going to drive me home?" He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I just blew a .33 in Sergeant Long's breathalyzer. I can't go out and get in my car." He said, "Well, we never thought of that." Lawyers. So, tell you what. I said, why don't I go into the hotel bar? And I'll have a few drinks in there. And when Sergeant Long's all packed up and gone, you can come get me. And so I did. And after 3 or 4 drinks, they came in and got me and told me the sergeant was gone. And so I went down to the Broad Axe and had a couple drinks down there, one of my favorite places. And then after the Broad Axe, I went over to the cellar door and had 2 or 3 drinks over there, just a little nightcap. And then I drove home. And that's just an evening of social drinking for the judge. On April the 7th, 1982, a local lawyer and myself had decided we were going to go out and get drunk. I told my wife we were going out to dinner. But he and I, we knew we were going out to get drunk. This was not one of those occasions when I allowed myself to be negligently overserved. Our intention was to get knee-walking, snot-flying drunk. And we did. And we ended up in a local honky-tonk there in Hagerstown. And had I known that this was going to be my last drink of beverage alcohol, I want to assure all of you that I would have ordered something else. And believe me, if I had had any inkling whatsoever that I was going to be asked to come to York, Pennsylvania, and to speak to you fine folks about my last drink of beverage alcohol, I would have definitely ordered something else. Because as you're about to hear, there is a significant amount of shame and a good deal of embarrassment associated with what I'm about to tell you. My last drink of beverage alcohol was Tia Maria. Well, how do you think I feel? And I can tell from some of the facial expressions on you folks that you don't have any idea what Tia Maria is. You never had Tia Maria in your life. Well, if you're in this room tonight and you're sober, you don't want to know what Tia Maria tastes like. And if you're planning on going back out, go back out for something else, because you're going to be really disappointed if you think, well, I'm going to get me some of that Tia Maria. Believe me. Well, my wife's a school teacher. She's an elementary school teacher. I think elementary school children probably in Hagerstown are very much like elementary school children here. They're just germ encrusted. And those little kids, they go to school, and those germs jump off of those little kids onto the teacher. And the teacher comes home, and those germs jump off onto the teacher's spouse. And the next morning I woke up, I had flu. Can you believe it? Flu. Just like that. Them pesky little kids had done it to me again. But we go to work. We don't want to miss work. We miss work. Somebody might say that our drinking is interfering with our work. Well, I don't miss work. Flu or no flu. That was Thursday. Friday was Good Friday. Courthouse was closed. Now I've got that upset stomach thing that frequently accompanies flu. I mean, it was not good. By Saturday, I had developed that lower tract of stress that you frequently experience when you got flu. And if you got that lower tract of stress thing going on, with that upset stomach thing going on, that's going to hone your decision making down to a very fine edge. Because I didn't know whether to sit or kneel or sit. And on one occasion, I made the wrong decision. And if my wife were here, you could talk to her about that. She was here the last time I was here. 4 or 5 of you wanted to talk to her about that. Easter Sunday, I still got flu. Monday, they put me in the hospital. But I am bad dehydrated from all that kneeling and sitting that I've been doing. And that night in the hospital, they were trying to hydrate me, and that night in the hospital, my abdomen became distended. And they did an emergency laparotomy on me, and they opened up my abdomen, and I was full of gangrene, peritonitis. And while they were trying to clean that up, they noticed my liver was enlarged and out of whack. And my pancreas was digesting itself. And my kidneys quit. And then my respiratory system failed. And things just weren't looking good for the home team. They just, not good. I was in intensive care in the Hagerstown Hospital for 3 weeks. They got me off the respirator, but the rest of my physical condition continued to deteriorate. And so they made a decision to send me to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And I told my wife they were sending me down there to die, that they didn't think there was anything could be done for me down there, but they're going to send me down there anyway. I'm glad they didn't tell me that. I'd have found that discouraging. See, I knew people had been to the Hagerstown Hospital and they had died. And all the people I knew went to Johns Hopkins, they lived. So I was feeling pretty good about going to Johns Hopkins. So I got down to Johns Hopkins, and for 2 weeks they did everything down there but hang me by my thumbs. And my belly button birthday is May the 14th. And on May the 13th, the 2 learned physicians who were in charge of my case came to my room, and before they could get a word out of their mouth, I told them, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. You've got to give me a day of rest. They said, well, Judge, that's why we're here. I mean, we've done everything that we know to do. We have presented your case to the internal medicine department here at Hopkins. We cannot even get a majority vote on what's wrong with you. We've done everything that we know to do, and we're here to tell you we're not doing anything tomorrow. And so I turned 40 in the Johns Hopkins Hospital. 2 weeks later, on May 28th, I was discharged from the Johns Hopkins Hospital. My kidney function returned. My liver came back to within normal limits. My pancreas stopped digesting myself. But if you're in a hospital for 7 weeks like that, they like to have a little chat with you before you go home about the do's and don'ts. What they don't want you to do so you don't come back. But if you've got an undiagnosed illness, they don't know what to tell you. And in my case, they told me, Judge, we suggest you don't get it again because it's likely to kill you, whatever it was. Now, I have always maintained that it's much better to survive an undiagnosed illness than to die of a known cause. I mean, that's the way I felt about it then. That's the way I feel about it tonight. I was almost out of that doctor's office when he said, "Judge, could we ask you one more question?" "Certainly." "Do you drink?" "Huh? What? What kind of question is that? I'm a lawyer." "Well, I used to be a lawyer, now I'm a judge, but when I was a lawyer, I had to drink with clients, I had to drink with other lawyers, I had to drink with judges. Now I'm a judge, I got to drink with lawyers, I got to drink with other judges. Of course I drink, it's a matter of professional obligation." "How much do you drink?" "Not much." "Why do you ask?" "Well, you've got 3 very delicate body organs involved. We don't know what would happen to your kidneys if you took a drink of alcohol. Nothing destroys the liver like alcohol. We don't know if you have any permanent damage to your liver or not. Too soon to tell. And then there's the pancreas, and alcohol just destroys the pancreas. And so we just think you should not drink for a while." "How long?" Important question. "A year." "Whew. A year? Whoa." "Well, I haven't had a drink since April the 7th, and this is May 28th. I think I can do that." "Sure." They said, "No, Judge, you don't understand. This is Memorial Day weekend. We want you to not drink for 1 year from June the 1st. Now, I know there are people in this audience who have already discerned the injustice that these 2 doctors were trying to foist upon me. I was getting no credit for my 7 weeks of continuous sobriety. I want you to know that a argument broke out between those 2 learned physicians and this knuckleheaded judge about whether or not I would not drink until next April the 7th or June the 1st. And we reached a compromise. And the compromise was that I would not drink until next April the 7th, and then if I thought any of the pain, suffering, and misery that I had just endured had anything whatsoever to do with drinking, that I would choose not to drink until June the 1st. And with that, I walked out of the Johns Hopkins Hospital into the most insane period of my life. Not drinking and not changing. Nobody has said anything about alcoholism. But we know that our book says that if you take alcohol away from the alcoholic becomes restless, irritable, and discontented. Well, I need to tell you that was a gross understatement in my case. I was pissed off in a spring-loaded position. And I was just waiting for you to say something to me. Because you know what? I am getting along just fine. Things with me are really fine. I suggest to you that maybe it would be a good idea if you just mind your own business and leave me the heck alone. Because I am telling you, I'm getting along fine, and if you would just do exactly what I have told you to do, we wouldn't be having this problem. So just leave me alone. I am fine. All right? Fine. How'd you like to add your DUI in front of me on Monday morning, Bill? Huh? Fine. Just fine. My alcoholic father On July the 3rd, 1968, was walking past a church in Hagerstown where the minister, so on July the 3rd, he put out on the message board, "Don't buy a fifth on the 3rd for the 4th." My dad went to AA that night, and he never drank again. And when he died with 15 years of continuous sobriety in this wonderful program. And I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Alcoholics Anonymous for my father's life. He lost everything of value, materially, and those things which were priceless. He lost a business that he had spent almost 30 years building from scratch. He lost that 30-year marriage to my mom. He lost the respect of his son, me, and my younger sister, his only daughter. When she got married, he was not invited to the wedding because she was afraid that he would come drunk, and he was not asked to give her away. I gave her away. And he lost everything. And Alcoholics Anonymous gave him back the stuff that's priceless. Gave him back his self-esteem. He became a person of integrity. The person that God had always created him to be. And I carry his 15-year chip with me, along with my chip. And I hope that in some small way that I can pay back to Alcoholics Anonymous a little bit on the debt which is owed for my father's life. Two guys in Hagerstown, Bob and Ken, active members of Alcoholics Anonymous, are watching me die of untreated alcoholism. Not drinking and not changing. Not drinking and not changing is a little bit like don't drink and go to meetings. And I sure hope you folks here in York, Pennsylvania do not say anything remotely close to that to people who come to Alcoholics Anonymous, because you tell somebody don't drink and go to meetings, you're going to kill somebody. You're going to kill a lot of somebodies. Because the only thing that happens to us when we don't drink and go to meetings, when we don't drink and don't change, well, the book says we're going to pick up a drink. Slow suicide. And I suspect there are many people in this room who have sworn off drinking, just like I swore off drinking. It's easy to quit drinking. I've done it hundreds of times. Sometimes I did it on Saturday morning and I was drinking by noon. Sometimes I lasted several days. One time I went 10 days. I swore I wasn't going to take a drink for 30 days. On the 10th day, it was a Friday. A hard week. Man, I tell you, a drink would take the edge off. You know what I mean? Just one or two. Mellow out. Catch buzz. Yeah, but Jack, you said you weren't going to drink for 30 days. Well, yeah, but it's been 10 days. I think everybody knows if you can go 10 days not drinking, you can go 30 days. Yeah, but Jack, you said you were going to do 30 days. Well, yeah, I might have said that. But I've had a bad week here. I mean, I've earned a drink. I deserve a drink. It's my God-given right to drink. Who made up this stupid rule anyway? Well, you did, Jack. Well, then we're going to change the rules. 10 days. You go 10 days without a drink, we're going to drink. That's what we do. Slow suicide. Or in my case, knowing that I could never drink again, I started contemplating driving into bridge abutments. Some of us go out windows or we hang ourselves. The sheriff in our community had shot himself to death in the basement of the courthouse. My office was on the top floor of the courthouse. I thought if I shot myself on the top floor of the courthouse, it would add symmetry to the building. You think that's funny? You're sick. You too. They're watching me die of untreated alcoholism. And Bob came to me and he said, Jack, we have this book in Alcoholics Anonymous. We call it the Big Book. And I was wondering maybe if you'd like to read it, find out about your dad's disease. Clever guy, that Bob. If he said anything remotely close to, we think you ought to read this book, find out what's wrong with you, we've already established there's nothing wrong with me. See, I'm not drinking. And everybody knows that alcoholics drink. So if I'm not drinking, by definition, I am not alcoholic. And with every passing day, of every passing week, of every passing month, of every passing year that I did not drink, it was proof positive that I am not alcoholic. Everybody knows that. I'm fine, okay? So I read the book. No surprise to me, my dad's in there. He deserves to be in there. He's a real alcoholic, as defined by the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. What I had not counted on was I'm in there. That book was written before I was born. How could they write in that book and know so much about my life experiences before I had those life experiences? How could they possibly know that? So I went back to Bob and Ken, and I said to them that I was willing to acknowledge that there was a possibility, a remote possibility, but a possibility nonetheless, that I may have contracted a very mild case of alcoholism. That's all Bob and Ken needed. They started coming to my chambers every Friday at lunchtime. That is my judge's office. And they brought their big books with them, and they brought a brown bag lunch. And we would eat our lunch. We would pray the Serenity Prayer. And we would read from the big book. And they, Bob and Ken, would explain to me the importance of what we had read. And I would explain to them as Jack sees it. And as you can imagine, we had many very high-level intellectual discussions about the contents of the big book and the meaning of those contents. And I pointed out to Ken and Bob, and I think it's important that I point it out to you, that while it is true that I spent 5 years in high school, I went to the community college and graduated with a degree in 2 years. I went to the University of Maryland, College Park. I got a bachelor's degree in 2 years. 3 years later, I graduated from the University of Maryland School of Law with a Juris Doctorate degree with honors, I might add. And Ken said, Jack, we've got degrees on rectal thermometers, and you know what we do with them. They're in my office. I said that in my office. I'd never heard that before. I've heard it a lot since I've been in AA, but I never heard it before. You see, Bob and Ken, they were willing to risk offending me because they knew that I'd been offended before, and they knew I'd get over being offended. And they were willing to risk angering me. They knew I'd been angry before, I'd get over being angry. But they knew I was dying of untreated alcoholism. And if something didn't change, and it didn't change soon, there'd be no coming back from that. They knew something that I didn't know. And they knew that I didn't know what it was that they knew that I didn't know. But they also knew that if I knew that they knew something that I didn't know, the mere fact that I knew that they knew something I didn't know, that fact would make me angry just knowing that they knew something. I didn't know what it was that they knew that I didn't know. But they knew what it was that they knew that I didn't know what it was that they knew. But they knew that if they were consistent and persistent in coming to my office and presenting to me the program of recovery of Alcoholics Anonymous, they believed and had faith that someday, possibly someday, I would come to know what it was that they knew that I didn't know. And when I found out what it was that they knew that I didn't know, that I didn't know that they knew what it was I didn't know, that I would no longer be angry knowing that they knew something that I didn't know, because then I would know what they knew that I didn't know. Because in AA, you know when you know that you know, and not a moment before. Now, if you followed that, you're in the right place. And if you found that to be the least bit confusing, you're still in the right place. Just means you don't know. On December 22nd, 1989, it was Friday before Christmas. The courthouse was closed. Ken and Bob and I could not meet in the courthouse for our Big Book lunch, but we had lunch together in celebration of Christmas, and we went our separate ways. Now, when I was drinking, my wife and I separated on 3 separate occasions, and there were women involved. And after I stopped drinking, and before I did anything other than stopping drinking, my wife and I were separated on 3 separate occasions, and there were women involved. I think that is pretty conclusive evidence that drinking had nothing to do with any of those 6 separations. But alcoholism had everything to do with all 6 of those separations, and we had no idea. And on this occasion, December 22nd, 1989, we were separated. And I was living in an apartment, and so when Bob and Ken and I split up, I went back to the apartment. Somebody had put well, not somebody, I mean, the postman had put a package against my door, a Hickory Farms package, one of those things you see at Christmas. Somebody had sent the judge a sausage or a cheese log. It's kind of nice. I think I'll go in, maybe I'll have a little snack and, get the answers off my answering machine. And so I went in and trying to figure out how to open this box, and I see where it's, taped shut, and I got my car keys out, and I slit that tape, and I'm listening to the answers on the answering machine. I lift the lid of the box. Oh! And I got blown back against the wall. And federal appellate judge had been killed 10 days before that by a bomb that had been sent to his home. 5 days before, a lawyer in Savannah, Georgia, had been killed by a package bomb that had been sent to his office. And I could smell the gunpowder, and I knew I'd opened a bomb. There was a fire. Tried to put it out, couldn't. Went out in the hallway, pulled the fire alarm. Neighbor came, said he had a fire extinguisher. I went back into the apartment, went back to another telephone where I went to call 911, and when I went to push the buttons on the phone, I discovered a part of my right hand had been blown away. And then when I hung the phone up, it felt like somebody was pulling my trousers off my hips, and I looked down at the floor, and I was standing in a puddle of blood that was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I looked at it. And I knew I was in serious trouble, and the neighbor who put the fire out asked if there was anything else he could do, and I asked him to get me a towel, and he did, and I opened my trousers. I did not have courage to attempt to visualize the wound. I just put the towel where I thought I'd been injured and put my back against the wall, and I slid down on the floor, and I was afraid, and I was alone, and I was powerless, and I didn't know what to do. I could feel life ebbing away, and I didn't have any tools because I hadn't done anything. But then I recalled that Bob and Ken and I began our every meeting on Friday afternoon with a serenity prayer. And I asked God to grant me the serenity to accept this thing which I couldn't change. Give me the courage to change what I could, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I prayed that prayer, and I prayed that prayer, and I prayed that prayer, and I prayed that prayer. And I can't tell you what was the fourth, fifth, sixth time through that prayer, but I can tell you this: God came. God came. And I experienced a sense of peace and well-being, the likes of which I have never experienced before in my life, nor have I experienced a sense. I didn't know if I was going to live or die on that floor, but I knew that if I died on that floor and I never saw my wife and our 3 children again, it'd be all right. Whatever happens, it'll be all right. And the police, fire, and rescue people burst through the door of my apartment, and both my eardrums had been blown out, and they were trying to talk to me, and I was having trouble hearing what they were saying. And as soon as I tried to communicate with them, a tremendous wave of fear swept upon me, and I told them, you guys do whatever you have to do, and I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing. And as soon as I returned to the serenity prayer, that sense of peace and well-being returned. And they cut all my clothes off of me with the exception of my red and green Christmas socks, and they put me on a board, and they strapped me to a gurney, and they carried me down 3 flights of steps, and they stuffed me in an ambulance. And our local TV station was Johnny on the Spot, and they got a picture of my red and green Christmas socks sticking out the rear of that ambulance. And they took me off to the hospital, and those socks went round the world on CNN, and I went to the hospital for surgery. And they couldn't find my wife, and they couldn't find my girlfriend, but they found my sponsor, Ken. And they let him come back where I was being prepared for surgery. And he held my hand, and he prayed for me, and we prayed together, and they took me up to surgery. And I don't know how shrapnel knows to stop passing through flesh. I can only tell you what they told me, and that was they removed a rather significant piece of shrapnel, not resting against but in close proximity to my femoral artery. And if my femoral artery had been nicked, you'd have a different speaker here tonight for sure. And they took me up to a recovery room, and when I came out from under the anesthesia, there at the foot of my bed was my sponsor, Bob. And let me say this, it's good to have a sponsor. Sponsors see things differently. They have a different take on things. And it's really good to have a sponsor. I noticed Bob was smiling. I said, Bob, I noticed you're smiling. What are you smiling about? He said, well, nothing really, Jack. He said, I just think it must be wonderful to know that you can't be harmed. They can't be harmed, Bob. Said somebody just tried to kill me. He said, oh, yeah, I know. He says, I understand that package you opened contained 4 pipe bombs. 1 pipe bomb is more than adequate to kill a human being, Jack. 2 pipe bombs, that's a little redundant. 3 pipe bombs, that's around the bend. 4 pipe bombs, Jack, I'd say you've made somebody really very angry. He said, in point of fact, man has done his very best to kill you, Jack. And the only explanation of your survival is the grace of God. It's good to have a sponsor. I wouldn't have come up with that in a million years. No way. He said, God has spared you for a purpose, Jack. God has work for you. Really, Bob? What kind of work does God have for me? Oh, he said, Jack, I wouldn't be so presumptuous as to even guess at what God's will is for you in that area. He says, I do know this for a fact, that it's God's will for you to be a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that means you're going to have to pray that 3rd step prayer with either Ken or with me. Do that 4th step inventory. Do a 5th step with me or with Ken. Make that 6th step decision. Pray that 7th step prayer. Make that 8th step list. Begin making those 9th step amends so you can live in 10, 11, and 12 and fit yourself to be of maximum service to God and to your fellow man. Good to have a sponsor. I wouldn't have come up with that either. Not my idea of a good time. Good to have a sponsor. Christmas Day, I was discharged from the hospital. And I began this wonderful journey we call Alcoholics Anonymous. A design for living that really works. My design for living was not working. I had a whole warehouse full of evidence. No matter if I was drinking or not drinking, my design for living was not working. Christmas 1989 was the best Christmas I'd ever had. Christmas 1990, my wife and I reconciled. If I don't screw this thing up, next Thursday, she and I will be married 43 years. If she were here tonight, you'd probably want to give her a chip for that. Because as you've heard, she's been married all 43 of those years, and I've had some time off for bad behavior. I had this attitude towards God. The book says some of us bristled with antagonism towards God, and I had this attitude. And Bob said to me, "Jack, what is your understanding of God?" And I said, "Bob, I understand God to be an old guy with long hair and a beard. He's sitting on a throne. He's wearing an ermine robe, and he's got a clipboard and a Sharpie, and he's making black marks against my name. And before that time I was 14 years old, there were so many black marks that I wasn't ever going to get back to even, let alone get ahead. He's a wrathful, punishing, vengeful God." He said, "Well, what kind of God would you like?" I said, "I'd like to have a loving, caring, forgiving, gracious God who wants only the best for me." He said, "Well, Jack," he says, "you can have that God." He said, how old were you when you were praying those prayers?" I said, "I was 14. Praying that my dad would stop drinking." He said, "Well, how old were you when he stopped drinking?" I said, "I was 26. He says, 12 years. He said, "You got any idea what 12 years means to infinite God?" Good to have a sponsor. I never thought about that. And never thought about that. He says, "Jack, 12 years. 12 years is a nanosecond. It's an infinitesimal period of time. You got pretty quick service. I'm not sure what your complaint is." Good to have a sponsor. I'd never come up with that. You know, if you're here tonight and you don't have a sponsor, this room is full of people who are eminently qualified to be your sponsor. Maybe you've been here a while and you had a sponsor. Maybe your sponsor moved away, or you've grown apart, or maybe they passed on, and you're doing that "I sponsor myself," the ism of alcoholism. I don't mean to be rude or unkind, but if you're doing that "I sponsor myself" thing, you got an idiot for a sponsor. Get a sponsor. We're not asking you to get married. We're just asking you to get a sponsor. Somebody who's been down the path ahead of me, who can take my hand and point out the pitfalls. Help me through the rough spots. Explain to me that I'm not the only person who thinks like I think. There's something wrong with my thinking. Big Book says if drinking was our problem, we'd just quit drinking and that'd be the end of it. Problem for the alcoholic centers in the mind. Simply how I think is my problem. S-H-I-T. Simply how I think is my problem. We've got this pamphlet here. You know, up at General Services, they're always asking for recommendations and suggestions. This pamphlet's called Is AA for you? And I've written some suggestions and sent them off to General Services. See if this resonates with you. Have you ever tried to stop thinking for a week or so and only lasted for a couple of days? Do you wish people would mind their own business about your thinking and stop telling you what to do? Do you envy people who can think without getting into trouble? Have you had problems connected with your thinking during the past year? Has your thinking caused trouble at home? Do you tell yourself that you can stop thinking anytime you want to, even though you keep thinking when you don't mean to? Have you missed days of work or school because of your thinking? Have you ever felt that your life would be better if you did not think? Simply how I think is my problem. S-H-I-T. I think somebody else in here has probably got that problem besides me. You know, it says in our big book that if we take these actions and we get ourselves right with our higher power, that great events will come to pass for us and for countless others. Great events will come to pass. If you've been in Alcoholics Anonymous any length of time, I'm talking about in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, not around the fringes of it, but if you've been in the middle of it, you know that that book is absolutely right. Great events have come to pass for me and for countless others. Nobody ever fell off the center of a flat roof. We fall off the edges. If you get right in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to be just fine. You hang around the edges, bad things are going to happen. Watching the Animal Planet one night. Animal Planet. Got them little gazelles out there on that Serengeti plain. They run around, jump around, have a lot of fun. Lions are there. It's really hot. Lions are sleeping. They're too tired to be messing with the gazelles. It's too hot. Sun goes down, cools off. Gazelles all bunch up real tight in a circle, because the lions are coming. And the lions are going to pick off a gazelle. They're not taking a gazelle from the center of the pack. They're going to pick off a gazelle that's out around the fringes. And that's what happens to us. Alcoholism comes looking. Alcoholism is an equal opportunity destroyer. Alcoholism is a killer. And it kills those of us who hang around the fringes of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you're here tonight and you're new, get in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. You'll be safe there. You go out there, something bad's going to happen to me. I go out there. Nothing bad has ever happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Any pain that I've experienced in Alcoholics Anonymous has been a direct result of my insistence on doing things my way. I've already told you, I worshipped at the altar of self-sufficiency most of my life and caused nothing but trouble for me and countless others. And once I got out of the debating society, and once I started to learn to live this way of life, things changed. And when God moves, God moves. I was at Akron for Founders Day, and I was staying in the dorms and going down to the shower, and there's a guy down there on Sunday morning and says, "Hi, I'm Woody from Baltimore." I said, "I'm Jack from Hagerstown." He said, "Oh, I come to Hagerstown all the time." So what do you come to Hagerstown for? He said, "I bring a meeting up to the prison. Me and my sponsor every month." I said, "I live 10 miles from that prison. I don't know anybody that takes a meeting there." He said, "Would you like to go with us?" Well, I mean, really like to talk to you about that, but I got to get back to meet my buddy here, so see you later, Woody. And I went back to my dorm room, and I told the guy I was with. He said, "You give him your phone number?" I said, "No." He said, "Jack, there's 15,000 people here. He'll never find you." I took comfort in that. And when you go to the dining hall there at Akron and you got the meal ticket, I mean, you go through about 8 buffet lines, and then they tell you where to sit. And they you fill in every seat on the side of the table, every seat, and then here come the people down the other side. And we did that all day on Saturday, so now it's Sunday morning, and every seat, and I wonder who's going to be sitting across from me. Don't get ahead of me now. Yeah, you're right. I mean, right there. Woody, right there. Not over here, not over there. Right there. And he says, that's him. That's the guy who wants to take meetings into prisons. Well, that's the last thing in the world that I want to do as a retired circuit court judge. I filled those prisons up with people. I don't want to go in there. But that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. Doing stuff I don't want to do. So I get stuff that I've never had. Ken said, Jack, you do what you do, you get what you get. You want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done. You keep doing what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. So I started taking meetings into prisons. Unbelievable experience. Just incredible. Great events will come to pass for you and countless others. Well, Bill's down there. He's telling me my time's running out. Reggie hadn't thrown anything at me yet, so I know I got a minute. Members, I of you, hope you all have a copy of this pamphlet. If you don't have a copy of this pamphlet, get a copy of this pamphlet. Greatest piece of literature in Alcoholics Anonymous outside of the big book. That's my opinion. If you've read this pamphlet, you have an opinion. If you have not read this pamphlet, you don't have an opinion. So why don't you just get the pamphlet and read it so you'll have an opinion. But here's what it says at the very end. It says, on Sunday, in the churches of many of us, if we read that portion of the Gospel of Matthew which recounts the time when John the Baptist was languishing in the prison of Herod, and hearing of the works of his cousin Jesus, he sent 2 of his disciples to say to him, Art thou he who is to come, or shall we look for another? And Christ did what he so often did. He did not answer them directly, but wanted John to decide for himself. And so he said to the disciples, Go and report to John what you have heard and what you have seen. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead rise, the poor have the gospel preached to them. Back in my childhood catechism days, I was taught that the poor in this instance did not mean only the poor in a material sense, but also meant the poor in spirit. Those who burn with an inner hunger and an inner thirst, and that the word gospel meant quite literally the good news. A number of years ago, 2 men, Ken and Bob, working singularly and together, maneuvered me into Alcoholics Anonymous. If they were here tonight and they said to me, Tell us, Jack, what did you find? I would say to them what I now say to you. I can tell you only what I have heard and seen. It seems the blind do see, the lame do walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead rise. And over again in the middle of the longest day or the darkest night, the poor in spirit have the good news told to them. God grant that it may always be so. My name is Jack. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April the 7th, 1982. As our good friend Ed was so fond of saying, I love each and every one of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for listening. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing.